As citizens of the 21st century, we all know that humanity has not always been the master of this planet. In Earth's distant past, the true rulers of all lands were the dinosaurs. Their traces can be found everywhere, and the image of gigantic beasts has been etched into everyone's mind. But why dinosaurs? Why do we think of them as giant reptiles? Were they really giant reptiles? And when did they get the name dinosaur? To answer all those questions and even related mysteries, we need to look back at the early days when fossils were first discovered. The day dinosaurs were unearthed by humanity. In 1676, a professor working at Oxford University named Robert Plot was tasked with studying some strange stones in the university's collection. Upon examining these stones, Robert was astonished by their unique shapes. He believed that to achieve such forms, the stones must have been shaped by natural forces, making them resemble bones. Thanks to these stones, we now have the story of dinosaurs. Robert discovered a stone buried in rock layers that caught his attention in the parish of Cornwall. Judging by its shape, it seemed to be the lower part of a human or some animal's thigh bone. Surprisingly, what Robert speculated turned out to be correct, but not entirely. Initially, the professor thought it was part of a giant human's thigh bone. After his research and self-questioning at times, he even believed it might have belonged to a Roman elephant. But ultimately, Robert chose to believe it was the bone of a giant human. The reason was that he had seen ancient depictions of giants from Greek and Roman artworks. Was this conclusion and the accumulated information enough to bring the professor closer to the truth? Clearly, at that time, there was no way to be certain. Even today, the exact identity of that bone remains unknown. A century later, Robert's research was utilized by Professor William Buckland in his scientific dissertation. During his study, William built an extensive fossil collection by searching large rocky outcrops around Oxford. He discovered a large jawbone filled with sharp teeth, vertebrae, parts of pelvic bones, shoulder blades, and some hind limb bones. From these parts, William concluded that they belonged to a modern reptilian species. In his research paper, he named this creature Megalosaurus, meaning great lizard. William also added that this reptile could reach up to 12 meters in length and weighed even more than an elephant. Thanks to Sir William's research, humanity began to form its first images of prehistoric life, and this fueled public curiosity. After Sir William's publication, people gradually paid more attention and dedicated more research to the giant bones. Moreover, some even became dinosaur hunters searching for fossilized stones. One of the first recorded dinosaur hunters was Mr. Gideon Mantell and his wife, Mary. In 1822, Gideon, a geologist and paleontologist, was spending time studying fossils in the English countryside with his wife. During one of their fossil hunting trips, Mary found some strange teeth along the roadside she often traveled. After discovering these specimens, she reported them to her husband. Upon hearing the news, Gideon spent several months exploring the area. Indeed, he found many more fossilized teeth, along with several massive bones. At the time of their discovery, scientists believed these teeth were far too large to belong to mammals or fish. After a period of careful study, results showed that the bones belonged to a large reptilian species unrelated to the Megalosaurus bones found by Oxford University. After many years of research alongside geologists and anatomists, Gideon realized that the teeth he had found closely resembled those of modern-day iguanas. However, the fossilized teeth were about 20 times larger than a normal iguana's tooth. Therefore, the creature must have measured up to 18 meters in length. From there, Gideon Mantell proposed that these fossilized teeth belonged to an entirely new species. Initially, he wanted to name it Iguanodon, meaning iguana tooth, but feared confusion with modern iguanas. Thus, in 1825, he officially named it Iguanodon. With both of the first known specimens linked to reptiles, we can understand why early depictions of prehistoric creatures were all imagined as giant lizards. Building on Gideon Mantell's work, in 1841, the English scientist Richard Owen coined the term Dinosauria, meaning terrible lizards. However, in Vietnam we call them Kung Long, because the word long sounds more powerful than lizard. But now, the real question people needed to ask was why dinosaurs only existed as ancient relics. Where had they gone through many stages of Earth's development? Humanity is now fairly certain that these creatures no longer exist. After all, if giant animals like dinosaurs were still roaming the planet, they would be all over the front pages of newspapers. Based on what humanity has learned from history and biology, we have two likely answers to this question. First, the darker possibility. They went extinct. Earth has undergone countless climatic and environmental changes, and mass extinctions wiping out 90% of species were not unusual. The second, more complex answer, they evolved. According to what we understand about living organisms' ability to adapt and mutate to survive, it is very possible that ancient dinosaurs evolved into modern species that look very different from what we imagine. The second answer might be easier to accept. But what about the first? Why didn't dinosaurs survive like other animals? Why do scientists firmly believe they went extinct? Because over the past century, we have found many fossils. Using radiometric dating techniques, archaeologists have confirmed that dinosaurs existed for at least 230 million years. However, there is a break in Earth's fossil record. That break occurred around 66 million years ago. Scientists found no dinosaur fossils dating beyond 66 million years. This means something catastrophic must have happened to the dinosaurs at that time. This period marks the transition from the Cretaceous to the Paleogene periods. Could a major event have altered the climate so drastically that it wiped out the dinosaurs along with entire ecosystems? The simplest answer to almost every major prehistoric mystery is, we are not entirely sure. But that doesn't mean we are completely in the dark about Earth's past. Thanks to modern technology and geological observation, we now have overwhelming evidence that 65 million years ago, Earth experienced a mass extinction event that wiped out nearly 80% of life on the planet. Even the mighty dinosaurs' rulers of their time could not withstand the devastation. Whatever happened had affected the global environment so severely that organisms at the bottom of the food chain were the first to suffer. Plants and small mammals died off, first leading to a decline in food sources for herbivores and predators alike. Over time, this shortage caused massive herbivore die-offs. Starvation became inevitable as the sky darkened and plants could no longer photosynthesize. Eventually, the predators at the top of the food chain also succumbed. As their prey dwindled, they too starved and disappeared. Fossil evidence, including numerous well-preserved skeletons and sedimentary records, all point to a catastrophic event around this time. This coincidence is not random. It strongly suggests that a massive disaster was responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. But what exactly was this disaster? Here, scientific debates begin. Was it the result of a dark day scenario or a terrifying new era? In December 2013, a team of geologists led by Professor Brian Gertsch from the University of Lausanne conducted a geological survey at Deccan Traps, India, believed to be the site of the largest volcanic eruption in history. Like every historical eruption, its power could not be underestimated. Volcanic gases could rapidly and drastically change the environment. Therefore, the Deccan Traps eruption stands as a strong candidate for the title of Dinosaur Killer. During the survey, researchers found volcanic rocks containing minerals like zircon, which forms inside magma. By dating these minerals, they could estimate when the eruption occurred and how long it lasted. This helped scientists understand how volcanic activity might have contributed to the extinction event. The findings were chilling. These rocks formed about 2 million years ago, precisely at the end of the Cretaceous period. The Deccan traps had been brewing toxic gases and massive amounts of lava for millions of years before erupting violently between 66 and 65 million years ago. Although scientists could not pinpoint the exact duration of the eruption, they estimated it lasted around 30,000 years. Even more alarming, the Deccan traps remained active for another 500,000 years, releasing over 1 to 5 million cubic kilometers of lava. Because the eruption lasted so long, the toxic gases it emitted severely polluted Earth's atmosphere. Gases like sulfur dioxide, SO2, and carbon dioxide, CO2, were continuously released, altering the climate drastically. Sulfur dioxide caused mass suffocation and accelerated decomposition. Acid rain devastated plant life, leading to a cascading effect that killed many other species. Yet, the disaster didn't end there. Sulfuric acid from the atmosphere seeped into the oceans, killing phytoplankton, the foundation of the marine food chain. When it seemed things couldn't get worse, they did. As SO2 was absorbed by the oceans, CO2 levels soared, enhancing the greenhouse effect. The climate became increasingly hostile, and already struggling species were pushed further toward extinction. CO2 also seeped into the seas, making survival underwater just as impossible as on land. The chain reaction wiped out nearly all life, causing a mass extinction event that eradicated between 50% to 80% of Earth's living species. However, this is only one theory based on evidence from a single volcanic site. Without a time machine, we can't be entirely sure that the Deccan traps alone caused the mass extinction. There might have been another culprit, one that came from the stars. Somewhere about 65 million years ago, on an otherwise ordinary day, a bright star suddenly appeared in the sky. At first, it seemed like a harmless celestial body, just another meteor passing by Earth. But this was no ordinary meteor. As it approached, it grew larger and larger until it appeared as big as the moon in the sky. At that point, the fate of most life on Earth was sealed. The impact occurred near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Based on the size of the crater, scientists estimate that the asteroid measured between 11 and 81 kilometers in diameter. With such a size, the impact was anything but minor. In fact, it obliterated all life within its immediate vicinity in just seconds. As it entered the atmosphere, the asteroid traveled at speeds 60 times the speed of sound, tearing through the atmosphere and generating shock waves powerful enough to crush anything nearby. Upon impact, the asteroid drilled deep into Earth's crust, causing massive seismic shocks that made the sky and ground roar in agony. The explosion was equivalent to dozens of nuclear bombs detonating simultaneously on Earth's surface. The entire sky lit up as if a second sun had appeared. Within a radius of 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers, every living thing was instantly incinerated. The temperature at the impact site reached over 10,000 degrees Celsius, melting rock and soil. The resulting heat wave ignited wildfires across a 1,500-kilometer radius, engulfing the surroundings in an apocalyptic inferno. Yet, this was merely the beginning of the catastrophe. The impact carved a massive crater into Earth's crust, violently ejecting molten rock and debris into space. At the same time, the seismic shock waves were felt across the globe, causing earthquakes and landslides everywhere. It's believed that this may have triggered further volcanic eruptions at the Deccan traps, waking the sleeping monster beneath the Earth's surface. The abrupt geological changes caused a series of mega tsunamis, with waves towering over a kilometer high, sweeping across oceans, ravaging coastlines, and tearing apart ecosystems in South America. But even that wasn't the worst part. The debris and molten rock ejected into space. By the impact eventually fell back to Earth. This natural missile barrage pelted the entire planet, causing widespread wildfires and ecological chaos. Wherever there was fire, there was smoke. The smoke, combined with toxic gases from the impact site, polluted the atmosphere severely. The inevitable result was a massive greenhouse effect. Earth's temperature soared. Ecosystems collapsed and plants and small creatures perished. First, as their food sources dwindled, herbivores followed, and finally, the apex predators succumbed. However, the nightmare didn't end there. Ash and gases released by volcanoes triggered by the asteroid impact darkened the sky, leading to a dramatic cooling event. Though it wasn't a full ice age, the sudden drop in global temperatures wreaked havoc on the planet's ecosystems. It ultimately drove more than 75% of Earth's species toward extinction. Both the Chicxulub impact and the Deccan Traps eruptions stand as strong candidates for the title of dinosaur killer. Which one was the main cause? Perhaps it was both. Maybe the Chicxulub impact triggered the Deccan eruptions, or perhaps the Deccan Traps were already active. Either way, both disasters happened within the same time frame, around 65 million years ago. When dinosaurs were struck by such a devastating double disaster, it's no wonder they didn't survive. Still, these are only theories. While layers of Earth's strata strongly suggest a global catastrophe between 66 and 65 million years ago, whether the Chicxulub impact, the Deccan Traps eruptions, or both were responsible, remains uncertain. However, one thing we know for sure, dinosaurs disappeared after that time. They went extinct, vanishing from the planet without a way to return. Yet life always finds a way. Somehow, we still have dinosaurs living alongside us. Every day. Who are they? If every creature from that ancient world perished, how is it that some life persists today? The answer lies in survival. A few species managed to endure the mass extinction event and evolved into the creatures we know today. How did they survive such destruction? Evidence shows that after the Chicxulub impact, dinosaurs themselves disappeared. The fossil record confirms no dinosaurs beyond 65 million years ago. However, the world today is filled with small animals. The largest living creature, the blue whale, reaches 30 meters, but most modern animals are much smaller. Smaller species had hiding places, underground, burrows and deep waters shielded them from the worst effects of the catastrophe. Meanwhile, larger land animals were much more vulnerable to the rapidly changing conditions. Additionally, carnivores had a survival advantage over herbivores. When climate change devastates plant life, herbivores lose their food source first, while carnivores can continue scavenging for longer. By combining those two survival advantages, small size and predatory behavior, the best survivors of the extinction were small, mobile, meat-eating creatures. From here, the story of feathers and teeth begins. Our understanding of the past relies entirely on the evidence left behind. Without a time machine, we can only piece together clues. When scientists find a layer of soil with completely different characteristics compared to others, and when that soil layer appears across the world, they realize something enormous must have happened in the past. Climate must have changed so dramatically that it blanketed the Earth's surface with strange materials. Over millions of years, dust and gases settled into the ground, creating mountains and new landscapes. Studying and analyzing this peculiar layer helps us understand that it is the remnant of a massive extinction event that occurred between 65 and 66 million years ago. In other words, we use present-day evidence to speculate about past events, saying that an asteroid impact or volcanic eruption killed the dinosaurs, no matter how plausible, is still speculation. Therefore, paleontology relies heavily on hypotheses, testing them to see which best matches the available evidence This isn't irresponsibility on the part of science. It's simply the best we can do with what we have. These limitations have sometimes led to amusing mistakes. In the past, when two fossils from different creatures were buried together, early scientists sometimes reconstructed them as one bizarre creature with complex anatomy. And when scientists uncovered fossils with characteristics of both birds and reptiles, they were baffled. Was it an ancient bird? A reptile? Or perhaps a bird buried alongside a reptile? This mystery kicked off in the 19th century when Hermann von Meyer discovered a fossilized feather, proving that birds existed during prehistoric times long before anyone had imagined. Later in the 1860s, a more complete fossil was discovered, specimen BMNH 37001. It contained both feathers and a lizard-like tail. Observing this fossil, one could see it had large feathered wings extending from its armpits to 3 fingers, while the remaining 2 fingers bore claws. Was this a bird, a reptile, or a combination buried together? With the discovery of this London specimen, scientists began to explain the sudden appearance of birds. Previously, they believed birds had abruptly emerged during the Eocene or early Cenozoic about 56 million years ago. But now, with this nearly 150 or million-year-old fossil, they knew for certain that the ancestors of birds existed far earlier. A decade later, in 1874 in Germany, another fossil similar to the London specimen was found. At first, researchers thought it was a type of flying reptile, like a pterosaur. However, upon closer inspection, they realized it shared too many characteristics with the London fossil. Thus, it wasn't a case of a bird being buried with a lizard. It was one creature possessing both feathers and a lizard tail. These 2 specimens weren't alone. Over time, scientists identified around 10 similar fossils worldwide. The creature was named Archaeopteryx, meaning ancient wing. However, this is where controversy arose. What exactly was it? It had feathers and wings, suggesting it was warm-blooded. Only warm-blooded animals can operate complex wing structures. It also had teeth and claws, indicating it was a carnivore. It seemed undoubtedly warm-blooded, yet its lizard-like tail suggested cold-blooded traits. Life constantly surprises us with its bizarre creations. Birds are reptiles. That's a fact few people realize. Biological studies show that species are classified based on specific physical traits. Cats and birds are vastly different. Their skeletal structures, internal organs, and appearances are all distinct. Anyone can tell them apart at a glance. However, when you place a domestic cat next to a lion, questions start to arise. They look incredibly similar, even though one is massive and the other small. Why? The same goes for dogs. There are hundreds of breeds, from long dachshunds to furry, wolf-like shepherds, yet all are still dogs. Why are they classified together? Because despite their differences, all dogs share core skeletal features unique to canines. A pug and a wolf may look different, but their rib cages and pelvic bones match, defining them as the same family. Meanwhile, animals like the platypus and the duck may share a duck bill, but their bones are vastly different, placing them in separate categories. What does this tell us about birds and reptiles? Reptiles have certain biological traits. They molt their skin. They excrete waste and urine through the same opening, the cloaca, and they lay hard-shelled eggs via that same cloaca. Birds do the same. They defecate, urinate, and lay hard-shelled eggs through a cloaca. What about molting? Actually, yes, they molt too. Crocodiles molt by shedding individual scales over time, rather than shedding all at once like snakes. Birds similarly lose their feathers gradually and grow new ones. Another form of molting. That's why juvenile birds look so different from adult birds. Beyond that, the shared traits between birds and reptiles extend to their pelvic bones, and the perforated abdomen structure. The structure and function of their hip bones are remarkably similar. We say remarkably because, of course, a crocodile's pelvis doesn't look exactly like a chicken's. But when you study the bone structure and joint functions, the similarities are undeniable. So, what conclusions can we draw? In 1940, Willy Hennig introduced a system of animal classification based on shared ancestry. In this system, birds belong to the group Diapsida, which also includes crocodiles, turtles, snakes, lizards, and reptiles in general. Why are birds and reptiles grouped together? This point continues to challenge Darwin's theory of evolution, but the fossil evidence is overwhelming. Reptilian species existed as far back as 320 million years ago, and about 120 million years later, a new branch called Archosaurs emerged, the ancestors of today's reptiles and birds. Around 65 million years ago, disaster struck, wiping out almost all Archosaurs, leaving only a few small, agile meat-eating survivors. These survivors were feathered dinosaurs. Feathered dinosaurs managed to endure the Great Extinction event and eventually evolved into modern birds. This was the initial hypothesis that researchers proposed when they found feathered dinosaurs predating the mass extinction. But that's only half the story. Today we see countless bird species with diverse forms and functions. Today, nearly all birds can fly using their feathers to perform intricate aerial dances. But not all birds use feathers for flight. Some use them for insulation in harsh climates, like penguins. Some, like ostriches, have abandoned flight, entirely optimizing their powerful legs for running. Feathered dinosaurs were the same. They didn't all look like the classic Archaeopteryx, with wings, claws, and lizard tails. Research into dinosaur fossils shows that these creatures weren't just a single species. They were an entire world of diversity. Just as today we have countless types of birds, rodents, and cats. Prehistoric times featured a vast array of different dinosaurs. If you find deep-sea creatures like 30-meter-long jellyfish and transparent fish strange today, imagine how bizarre prehistoric creatures must have been. Our current era is actually an ice age, although few realize it. Today's average global temperature is around 13 degrees. Back in the dinosaur era, Earth's average temperature was about 27 degrees, twice as hot. Imagine living in a world twice as warm as today, and you'll understand why dinosaurs evolved feathers. Feathers weren't just for flying, they were an adaptation to protect against the sun's radiation, to prevent overheating, and to conserve water. Thus, Archaeopteryx wasn't the only feathered dinosaur, and thankfully, we've uncovered fossils that prove it. During fossil excavations, paleontologists found ancient creatures with unique features, walking on two hind legs, having hollow bones, possessing large teeth, and bearing claws on their forelimbs. These traits clearly indicated carnivorous behavior. After this discovery, the field of dinosaur research expanded rapidly. In 1881, American paleontologist Othniel Charles Marsh coined the term theropoda, meaning beast-footed ones. Initially, this term was used for a range of carnivorous dinosaurs like Megalosaurus, and, of course, the legendary T-Rex. However, as scientists continued unearthing bizarre creatures like Coelophysis, the scope of theropoda expanded to include one of the largest groups of ancient animals ever found. Over time, they discovered feathered theropods, such as Anchiornis and Sinosauropteryx. With this evidence, the old image of a world ruled solely by scaly reptilian giants was shattered. The prehistoric world was revealed to be filled with creatures that had fur feathers, scales, horns. Some swam, some flew, some ran, all in a chaotic mix of shapes and sizes. However, the devastating blow from the heavens wiped out the large-bodied ones, leaving only the small, agile survivors. In this diverse dinosaur family of clawed, feathered, colorful beasts, only a few species survived. Surprisingly, they thrived. Some dinosaurs fully adapted their feathers for flight, like eagles. Some abandoned flight in favor of running like ostriches. Others used their feathers as insulating coats during bitter cold periods like penguins. Birds, they aren't simply descendants of dinosaurs, they are dinosaurs. The creatures we see today flying above us are the last living dinosaurs that survived multiple mass extinctions. Why dream of recreating dinosaurs when every day we can see them running around in the countryside, perched in trees or soaring through the skies? Ironically, there are more living dinosaurs birds today than the number of dinosaur fossils we have found throughout history. Because we know so little, we can't definitively say what all ancient dinosaurs looked like. But that's a good thing. It shows how vibrant and diverse life truly is. From scaly reptiles, some dinosaurs grew feathers. To shield themselves from the harsh sun, evolved into better hunters and travelers, and ultimately survived extinction. These dinosaurs are still omnivorous today. Some are predators, some are herbivores, some fly, and some run. They even perform elaborate courtship dances and produce fascinating sounds. Imagine a T-Rex wiggling its feathery tail to impress a mate. What a sight that would have been! Despite the universe's harshest challenges, dinosaurs proved one undeniable truth. Life always finds a way to survive. And to conclude this incredible story, just remember, if someone ever mocks you by calling you a chicken, proudly respond, "Yeah, I'm a chicken, hear me roar." And that wraps up Season 1 of our prehistoric journey about the existence of dinosaurs. The video that wiped out nearly all dinosaurs, yet the survivors are still living around us today. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. You can also support us directly by clicking the Join button to become a member and access exclusive content. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.